Hey, good morning. Thank you guys for joining us today. On behalf of Kiddom, we're thrilled for the opportunity to have Labster join us today to kind of discuss how you can bring this immersive digital science experience into your classroom to really drive student-centered learning. We feel that incorporating the exploration of real-world scenarios alongside Kiddom's robust teaching and learning environment is the most powerful way to encourage student inquiry, collaboration, and learning application. And that being said, I would love to introduce our panel for today's webinar. Starting off with myself, my name is Quentin Murr. I'm a senior account executive here at Kiddom. I have a background in education where I taught for 6 years down in Uvalde, Texas. I got to teach math and science and really sparked my passion for education. I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Allen, let him introduce himself.
Hey, everybody. I'm Julian Allen. I'm the Vice President of Academic Affairs at Labster, and I came to Labster last year after working about 25 years working directly in higher ed, supporting instructors and how they teach and students and how they learn, especially around the adoption of innovative and forward-looking techniques and tools.
And then we have Miss Jenny Lee Ennis. I'll let her introduce herself just quickly.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jenny Lee Ennis. I'm a high school science teacher at Savannah Chatham County E-Learning Academy. And we're in sunny Savannah, Georgia.
Thank you. We get to dive a little deeper into Jenny Lee's story here shortly. So we look forward to that. I'm going to pass it back over to Dr. Allen and let him kick this off.
Yeah. I think I wanted to start the conversation today with all of you, really around what we've been seeing change in the entire educational landscape, in looking at who our students are, where they come from, and what's changing in the way we relate to them and the way they relate to the content we have to teach, the tools we use to teach. It seems like such a generational shift that's been happening, where we have students who are now being born and getting into middle school and high school, having always had access to a digital device in their hands. And we find ourselves sometimes as educators competing for their time, competing for their attention. They experience the world quite differently than you and I did, when we were growing up and going through our early learning and then, on into college. But at Labster, and I know with many of you, we've all learned that we can't ignore, right? We cannot ignore where students find themselves today. That instead, if we find ways to embrace it and be creative in our techniques, in our tool sets, and that we can have a lot more success identifying with those students, where they are, and with the different backgrounds they come from. So that's a little bit about the student, journey, kind of leading up into this conversation. But I also want to talk about shifts in the instructor world. And we can change to the next slide to take a look at what we've been seeing happen with our incredible instructors. I mean, I know we can all look back and think about who our favorite teacher was. I think about, Miss Ward, who taught me in third grade, and then, my science teacher, Miss Collins, who, introduced me to all these incredible ideas, as I was going through high school science, and all these different incredible people in my life. But there's a shift that's happening out there in how the world thinks about the role of education. And we, whether we work on the side of working in higher ed or in K-12 or in the companies that supply those incredible instructors with the tools they use to do their job, we have to think about, what's our role going to be? So, we see out there that most teachers overwhelmingly feel they have more expectations on what they're supposed to be doing and fewer resources to get those things done. And we've seen way too many times that we hold teachers accountable for the results of students on some standardized test that in some way seems so distantly related to real learning, right? Like that diving in and getting excited about a topic, about a discipline, about the future. And, that's something that at Labster we've been trying to tackle from the point of view of, how do we ignite this passion for our students? How do we push aside, sort of this kind of public discourse a little bit? And you kind of switch to the next slide. There's this quote I found, I wish that I could say that we teachers knew we were doing good work and able to ignore the depressing news that we're somehow failing year after year. I wish I could say that we were able to ignore those messages that told us that the most important thing we could do was to raise a test score. And I think about the other side of this equation. What if the conversation were far more about, how do I engage students in a way that they get excited again about learning, that you can take a complicated and somewhat, at least perceived as difficult topic like high school biology or physics or something like that, and make it truly interesting and applicable in a way that a student wants to be a part of it. So I think there are answers to this. I genuinely do that. That's one of the reasons I came, after working in higher ed for so long, came to a company where I think we're doing this day in and day out. We live and breathe this idea. And you can switch to the next slide. That when we ask ourselves that question, how do we really get students started down this path of having a real learning advantage? We know that our students are coming from different places, different populations, different learning backgrounds, different capabilities. And we know that sometimes the way that folks before us did it in the past may not be working as well. Like, how do we change it up? How do we get those students re-engaged? So the good news for us is that the conversation we're going to have today is all going to be on the positive side. Let's move to the next slide. We're going to be talking about ways to prepare students in their work. When you think about, scientific labs, that's the area that Labster works in, can be intimidating, right? It's something that students really haven't faced on a day-to-day basis. They're being brought in and expected to be scientists and, working with things that they haven't really tried before. But, at Labster, we've been focusing on, how do you get the students ready for that experience? And in the case of online learning, how do you recreate that experience in a way that they can really engage and really feel like they're really there? We casually say at Labster that we put $1 million science lab in the hands of every single student so that they can get ready for their labs. They can practice over and over again, no matter what experience they have coming into their science course. Faculty members can work with them and kind of track what's working, what's not, intervene, and make sure that the students are getting right back on track. And then even after they've gone through, say, a physical lab, they can use something like Labster to go back and reinforce what they learned and maybe kind of re-exercise those thoughts in a different way. Let's go one more slide over. So we heard from, we listen to our students all the time, right? So we kind of put out this open call. Tell us what you think. And the fun thing is we actually look at social media all the time too. And I think this is one we found on Twitter where one of the students said about Labster, "This is insanely impressive. And I actually enjoyed my homework today. 10 out of 10, I would do this in my free time." Because what we've tried to drive at Labster is creating an environment that's fun, right? That students want to get engaged in a way that's similar to some of the games that they play. There are real world challenges that they need to solve, and they have an opportunity, instead of maybe running around trying to steal cars, they have an opportunity to run around in a virtual space and solve real world problems in a way that keeps them interested. So let's move to the next slide. So I promised I would keep my section really, really short because there's nothing like hearing it from the words of the people who live and experience teaching every single day. So we wanted to welcome Jenny Lee Ennis, who has been using Labster for some time in her science classes. And I'm going to let her introduce herself, but I do want to point out really quickly, voted most inspirational educator in 2023 by the senior class and a STEM Excellence Award winner in 2022 by Labster. But looking at this most inspirational educator in 2023, I don't know that she's going to mention this, but this was a unanimous vote of every single person in the senior class. And again, like I was thinking back on like who some of my teachers were. I mean, to be able to give back to a teacher this level of recognition just got me so excited. So with that, I am just so thrilled to invite to our conversation Jenny Lee. So Jenny Lee, dive in and introduce yourself. Tell us who you are.
I'm actually, I've always been in the education field, even though I began my journey as a marine biologist. I've always enjoyed helping others. And honestly, I think you and I talked about this, Dr. Allen, when we had a conversation. I wanted to be what I couldn't see in this world because growing up and wanting to work in the STEM field, it was difficult because there wasn't a lot of females at that time. But more than that, accessibility. I didn't really have access to these real world experiences so that I can dive in, get my feet wet to see, what STEM career I wanted. Um, and honestly, being an educator was a dream come true. I know a lot of people always say, you start and then you end up being an educator. That is absolutely not the case. You follow your passion, you follow your calling, and a higher calling is what teaching is. Um, and honestly, the pandemic pivot that we all lived through 4 years ago. Let's see, it's February 16th. Happy Innovation Day, everyone. 4 years ago, who would have ever thought that we would all be, living this kind of life pretty much permanently for some of us? But very important is that technology is not just a solution. It actually is the changing of the paradigm, so to speak. So I will quit being so verbose, Dr. Allen, and turn it back over to you.
No, this is going to be a conversation, so I'm sure I'm going to have tons of questions for you. But one thing that impressed me when we first started talking was you're definitely a silver lining kind of person, right? You see the good out there in the world. So let's speak to that a little bit. Like, what were the COVID lessons that were learned that has created, in some ways, a better world for our students?
So I was an early adopter of all technology. I, got my Google certifications really early. I had all these educational grants. So my kids had Chromebooks 4 years ago when it was time for us to have a permanent spring break, so to speak, right? Um, so the kids had access to technology at school, and once we were all at our separate places, it was just the question was, how do we keep it moving, and how do we do hands-on labs in a virtual setting? And the silver lining was always there because educational technology always delivers. That's exactly what the best is yet to come has always been my motto because it's Innovation Day. Innovation means to make life easier, more productive. These labs are actually they change the way that I teach. And everything about it is unfortunately in this world, it's a cost benefit analysis. Um, and it wasn't a hard thing for me to sell, so to speak, to my district and to my very supportive and innovative superintendent and purchasing department and fabulous administrators, when really all you have to do is get student feedback and show them the data. And moreover, if you think about science, all we do is spend money in brick and mortar on supplies. Supplies are expensive. I mean, I don't know if teachers raise your hand if you hate doing the data, the sheet to keep track of supplies. And honestly, that was the biggest selling point. Not that we were going to go back into a lab or anything, because we did create the Savannah Chatham E-Learning Academy to, of course, meet the needs of all learners. Learners are diverse. If we're trying to tell students that the only way you can learn is by being in person, I think the pandemic proved that wrong. Learning happens.
So tell me a little bit about your school. You teach in an entirely online high school, is that right?
Yes, the Savannah Chatham E-Learning Academy. We call ourselves SELA. You can see that up above my head. We are Sea Dragons. We began in July of 2020. It was in the works. Like I said, I'm very much in a positive, innovative school district who wanted to meet those needs. Even before the pandemic, it was in the works. But of course, it kind of forced our hand a little bit faster and it needed to happen because the best things come in times like these. Um, I will say in July of 2020, once all the students were from all different parts of our county, this is a public school system, and they were all given the same access to technology. Everybody had Wi-Fi hotspots. Everybody has Chromebooks. And that's hard to meet the needs of everyone in this day and age. But thankfully, the pandemic made sure that we had access to those things, and our school district is very forward thinking in that way. So every child comes to the table, so to speak, with the same tools for learning. And this is where Labster is basically the table where we all meet and everyone's able to accomplish the goals of learning we have for that particular lesson.
So I remember, working in higher ed through this entire process, there's arguments on both sides of the table that students can engage in an online environment and receive a high quality education. And there's the counterpoint that no, you need to be in a physical place to engage with those around you. Can you talk to me some about your experiences as a teacher working with students in an online space? How do you recreate presence and community? And especially if you can and touch on, and you mentioned this too, students coming with very different backgrounds, right? Like students who come to that table with very different equipment, like very different, mental capabilities, learning capabilities, backgrounds, all those kinds of things. Um, Tell us about your experience there. How do you work through that?
It's actually people always ask me, do you really connect with students when I'm not physically in their presence? I would say we're more connected, and especially when it comes to the material. As a teacher, I'm really into storytelling. Science in itself is a narrative that we all have to portray. We have anchoring phenomena, which we use as in the 5E model of instruction. That's our engagement stage. We have to catch them. You have to throw the line out. It's a fishing metaphor. I was going to the country bumpkin in me. Let's go fishing. Got to go fishing. Got to get their interest. And then if you follow the model of the 5E model of instruction, which our school uses the online driver model to deliver asynchronous instruction with synchronous Zoom sessions to support our students as needed. It's the perfect place to use a Labster is for exploration. So when you finish your engagement, which is your anchoring phenomena, you start, you wrap up, you have your big, this is this week's lesson, this is the phenomena. Let's reach the kids where they are. Let's grab them by the heartstrings. Usually I have a personal story. It has to do with a health situation, or I bring in these role things. And that storyline and gamification is also in Labster. That's the biggest draw of Labster, is that you're actually participating in a storyline just like in real life, or as the kids call it, IRL, in real life. So we have to meet the kids where they are. They're not wanting that face to face. They like this digital platform, asynchronous, synchronous, whatever model you're using for hybrid instruction. When you use the 5E model and you explored with using Labster, then you have all the different supplemental materials that you can use for the explanation part, for doing your lab report, which of course is built into Labster. All those materials are there. And then that gives me a chance to bring the kids into Zoom, do some question and answering, do some peer feedback, use the ladder of feedback and all the tricks that you can use in person. So teachers have choices. If you're a brick and mortar teacher, you have choices. You can expand upon the exploration stage where students are taking a look in the Labster to cover the standards for that day. But of course, then you can draw them back in other ways, in discussions and such. There's so many options, and it works as accessibility goes. All of my learners, all of my 504s, IEPs, all of my ELLs, my English language learners, everyone is able to come to the table. Everyone has that full access, and the universal design for learning. I mean, UDL principles are so important in this day and age. And I find that Labster, I did my research as any good scientist does. I did a lot of background research before I dove headfirst into the world of Labster in 2020.
So you mentioned in real life, in the real world. And, like you, I live in the state of Georgia, and there are massive changes happening, like there are all around the country. But like thinking about education in a local context, huge increases in the need for people who have a STEM background to work very scientific jobs, right? The changes in battery technologies and automobile innovations that are coming to our state. And again, we're seeing this everywhere, that so many jobs, right? And I think I saw the numbers the other day that STEM related jobs are outpacing the creation of non-STEM related jobs 3 to 1. But our combined education system, K-12 up through higher ed, is not producing 3 times the number of STEM graduates, or even graduates in non-STEM fields who have an appreciation for what happens in STEM fields. Talk to me some about like what you've done, what Labster does with you to help inspire students to engage, to take on scientific challenges. What are you seeing in the real world?
Honestly, I think the biggest, most impressionable thing that's happened to me, it just is a story about one of my students who was struggling in person in school. In the real world, the student was not staying on campus. He was not getting his credits because he was leaving campus. So when he came to me last semester as a brand new student, he had no interest in learning, period. This was a totally disengaged student. He just would barely talk to me in Zoom. He wouldn't do his work. And just to give you this scenario, because this is someone who was ready to check out, he was ready to quit school, be done. You know, he did not want to do anything else. I talked him into doing a Labster. And when he came back to me, he says, I've never enjoyed anything like this before. And this is a student who has struggled in the past with learning. And we just celebrated a milestone yesterday. He made a 100 on the photosynthesis on simulation. First time, did not need a do-over, which I always set them for unlimited attempts, because in the real world, when we do labs, you make mistakes, you go back and fix them until you get the results that you're expecting. And if you don't get the opportunity to redo it, you don't learn from your mistakes. Um, but he did that, and he was so happy. He hasn't gotten a science credit until now. He's getting a credit. It's honestly, it's one of the biggest things that has happened to me in this school year. I mean, there's many of these stories, but this one is really touched my heart, because I don't believe he would have finished school. And now he's asking me. He's already done all the work for this week. He's asking me today. He's like, Miss Ennis, what can I do today in Labster? Have you already added the ones for next week's lesson? I'm ready to go. Let's go. So that is really IRL in real life. This young man is he's going to be successful because the engagement piece is there.
I, Stories like that are so heartwarming, because we know that you're not the only instructor who experiences that when you have that connection, right? That moment with that student. So I'm wondering if you have a favorite Labster scenario that you think either you enjoy the most, or or one of our simulations that maybe your students enjoy the most, and tell us about it.
There's so many to choose from, but I will say my favorite unit is always to teach genetics. And of course, Dr. Allen knows why. I'm a genetic phenomena myself. So I use anchoring phenomena of my own family history and my own Punnett square to launch it with my immune deficiency. I have CVID. So I think it's really good for kids to actually do the Punnett squares and pedigrees in your platform, because it's a much different way to complete the genetics unit. There's so many other things, and there are nuances to the lessons and supplements, but those are the two that really drive home genetics, the genetics unit for me. And that's a pretty hard unit to teach. I think all the science teachers here would agree.
Oh my gosh. And being able to share a real story like that about what's going on. I was thinking about how during the COVID pandemic, right, there was so much public discourse on science itself. And I was kind of thinking through, it's like, well, this is one of those opportunities where we want people to have this grounding in scientific literacy. So, I took all my high school science classes. I took college physics, and I can't tell you today that I know how to like actually go back and engage in some of the formulas to calculate a force or something like that. I'm embarrassed to say. But talk to me a little bit about what you want students to take with them past the course itself, and how do you make that happen? How do you engage the students in a way that learning lasts?
So every child needs to feel successful. And in traditional learning platforms and in the way things used to be done, you don't feel very successful. That the young man story that I told you a while ago, he just assumes he's going to fail every time he takes something. He's had a complete turnaround this semester. Now, mind you, he did fail my course last semester because he came to me late. He's back with me this semester. He has a B average. I imagine we'll have an A average. That's how much more we've engaged this one student, just one student. We reach one, each one teach one, reach one, whatever it is we do. We had this one. It's this one kid, that I've latched onto, and I said, you just never know what's going to catch their attention. So you just hope that everything you throw at them, but you have to be really careful as a teacher. You don't want to use too many educational platforms. So you stick to a very, everybody talks about pedagogy, and we talk about all the different tips and tricks and all the tips of the trade of teaching. But student engagement and what students want to do, if you want to reach a child, you have to meet them where they are, and they're not where we've been looking. Where they are is on these devices. The kids love to sit at their jobs. This is another thing that's groundbreaking for me. I have kids who work full time when they're not virtual learning with me, and they're on their phones doing labsters between on breaks. I don't know if I've mentioned that before, but for a student to be able to do labs on a phone now, and they're choosing to do that so that they can get their work done. So that freedom and that
Mm.
ability for students to do what they need to do and not have to be confined. It's innovation at its finest. It's learning, it's flexibility with accountability, which is what our school motto is actually at CELA. But everything that you need is offered in that platform in order to learn. And when the students sit down to take we have what's the standardized test called the GMAS. Everybody always tells me in their survey at the end of the semester, I ask them for their feedback. It's always the labsters they remember when they're answering
Mm.
questions. That scientific inquiry built into Labster with the storytelling, with the gamified presence, all of it comes back to the teenagers, to their mind. And that's really where the game changer is.
Well, now you're already hinting at the answer to this next question, but as schools came out of COVID, there seemed to be a mad rush to stop, buying some of the tools that people bought during COVID, right? There was an emergency response to a unique situation, but then there seemed to be like a lot of lessons learned about how we could change up education, how K-12 education, how higher ed could be different. You've been successful at continuing the lessons that you learned and to continuing to buy the tools. And I opened up part of this conversation by recognizing that unique place that K-12 teachers often find themselves wanting to engage in a certain way, but not having the resources. So what have you done at your institution to keep that momentum in in keep that budget going in the what you consider the right direction towards supplying students with innovative tools?
First and foremost, I have always had a very supportive school district and administration who finds that in their budget. We all began the pandemic with grants, the CARES Act and such, and the districts were pouring money to see what things they could roll out. And I did have to do, like I told you before, the cost benefit analysis to prove that there's all this benefit and and reduced cost compared to brick and mortar lab supplies. There are so many things when you're in a classroom with students. There are so many factors. As you know, teachers, we have behavior management as its own ordeal when we're working in labs. That's not something that I miss, I will have to say. But the same lab skills, the soft and hard lab skills, are taught in that platform. The kids have to go through the same thing of putting on the lab coat, putting on the goggles, those routines. And my students who are now in college, we had 2 years worth of graduates. They've said, Ms. Ennis, the Labsters were just as beneficial as the hands-on labs that we had before that. And they've gone into those college. A lot of them were dual enrollment while I was teaching them. I teach AP environmental science and honors biology. And so a lot of those students have reported back, because I stay in touch with them, that those skills carry over. It's not just a Band-Aid. I get so aggravated, and I'll turn red in the face even more now, or think it's a Band-Aid. This is not just a temporary solution. This is the way that we should be changing the paradigm of education. And we keep investing in brick and mortar textbooks and lab supplies. That is not catching students. That's not, we don't want to catch them and release them. We want them to stay in the STEM fields. Sorry to all the other fields, but we do have a problem with STEM fields. And that's why these real world scenarios, the in real life stuff, all the anchoring phenomena, it's just one complete solution. I honestly don't think I could teach without it. I started the school year in July of 2020, coming up with my own virtual labs, going to all the free platforms, going to all the other places. I tried everything else. And I'm just saying that if I could, I've written papers on it in my graduate school programs. There is nothing else that answers every issue in every corner and every facet of my life as a high school science teacher, in meeting the needs of students and of the educators, because we cannot create from scratch virtually the way that we could in brick and mortar. Your role changes. I have an online teaching endorsement on my certificate, and part of that was that our role should be facilitating science. We're not supposed to, the sage on the stage days are over. That is not where education should be going. The focus is not me. The focus is not teachers. The focus is the student, is individualized. It is meeting the students no matter where their actual abilities are. I have so many students who are at a loss for literacy. We struggle with literacy. It was bad before the pandemic. It's worse now. This scientific literacy that's coming out of the use of Labster is a turnaround. The learning loss that we saw before. I see improvement no matter what standardized tests show. I see improvement. It may be anecdotal, but it's there. And again, it's because Labster was the solution.
Well, I'm going to ask you one more question from me, and I don't know if Quentin's got some question. I know that Quentin's got some additional things to share with us as well. And then maybe when we finish up with that, we'll actually have a little bit of Q&A. We can kind of come back to some questions. But one final question, if you can, think of a very concise way. If you can speak to Jenny Lee 4 years ago, right? We're kind of celebrating that 4th anniversary of when the world changed. If you could speak to Jenny Lee 4 years ago, because I know on the line and people who will be watching this video in the future are considering adoption, or thinking about it, or maybe are new adopters. What would you tell Jenny Lee? What few little nuggets would you tell Jenny Lee 4 years ago at the beginning of this journey?
So the panic set in. We all had that pandemic pivot panic. And you could have all the certifications in the world, all the Google certification, all the LMS. It doesn't matter how many learning management systems you can do in your sleep. You can't create something this immersive and this this, worthwhile and authentic engagement yourself. This is something that you have to look for help. So we don't, as a teacher, you always feel like you're the one responsible for the creation of these things. You have to find the tools, and this is the tool that works for everyone.
Yeah. Well, with that, I'm going to draw this part of our conversation. Quinn, did you have anything you wanted to ask before we move on to your section?
Yeah, that was great. I enjoyed hearing that, Jenny Lee. There was a question, we'll get to them, but I felt like this tied in perfectly.
Please.
From someone out there, but they were asking, is gamification too much, or do you feel it's learning? I think you made that very clear. But where they were saying, where's the line? So what have you noticed so far in your experience? Where the line is with that.
So I'll tell you, I did all the tricks. Everybody knows Kahoot and quizzes. I'm starting naming names now. We've all done them, GimKit, all the things that we can do to get kids into the gamification mode. Labster is nuanced. It employs those things that gamification, it's competitive, it has all that, but it's the storyline, it's the actual movement, it's the augmented reality with the virtual reality. Believe me, I did a paper in this. I did a dissertation on this, and how educational technology through Labster and using the 5E model of instruction to deliver this quality of virtual education and in-person education. Like I said, um, I know all the teachers that I've spoke with on our community campus at Labster, they've used it in person as a pre-lab, as a post-lab. If you're still, of course, a brick and mortar teacher and not ready for the virtual world, of course that can be a part of it. But students will tell you, and if you keep, students going to give you feedback. You're going to know really quick if they find this to be tedious, if they find this to be a waste of their time. And 99.9% of the time, they always come back to me and say, "Well, that was a game changer. That was different." Um, and like I said, the student who never wanted to do their work last semester, when he finally did that, he was like, wow, where's this been all my life? And someone who had no interest in finishing his education is now going to. So, and that is a true story. It happens every day. Something like this comes up. And I will have my email address provided to anybody else who has questions.
Loved
I
it.
think you can anticipate your inbox filling up pretty soon. I know I'm going to be in touch with some additional research questions. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day. When you told me what your teaching schedule was, I was like, I don't know when we're going to find time for you to have a public conversation, but thank you for that. We really, really appreciate that. It's an exciting story, so much for us all to learn. So with that, let's hand it back over to Quentin.
Absolutely. All right. So, after getting to hear, Jenny Lee's story and how Labster is really making, science accessible for students through this, immersive experience that's really bringing it to life. I'm excited to announce, that we here at Kiddom have a partnership with Labster. And this partnership, it's going to do. It's just going to braid our high quality phenomenon inquiry-based materials with their interactive discovery and lab activities. So, we're stoked about that, and that being said, I want to share a bit about Kiddom. I'm excited about this opportunity to really kind of get to share with you guys how our digital teaching and learning environment really enhances curriculum and educational experiences, not only for teachers, but also, for the main part for our students. So our belief really is that we do believe that high quality core curriculum is critical to delivering that outstanding education. But what we bring is our technology. It's helping the teachers digest that. It's helping them to personalize it and really to deliver the high core curriculum in a more personalized way. So in addition to this collaboration that we have with Labster, we serve as the digital partner for OpenSciEd. That's going to be grades 6 through 8 and OpenStax. And our OpenStax curriculum that we're going to hit on today focuses on biology, chemistry, physics, and anatomy and physiology. And really one thing that I do want to make known is that our material is available nationally with 100% alignment to the next generation science standards and in state-specific versions like Texas, you see here, where we're aligned 100% to the new science TEKS. So kind of just a quick walkthrough today. Like I said, I do want to make sure we have plenty of time for those questions and answers at the end. So I'm gonna move through some a bit quicker. But I want to talk about the secondary challenge to start with. Moving from that, our exploration unveiled, where we kind of take a look at how students transition from middle school to high school science. The path forward, where I'm going to take a bit deeper dive into Kiddom and really how we enhance this high quality core curriculum. And then really briefly, I'm just going to touch on, professional learning and the importance we see in it and what we can bring to really enhance that curriculum for you guys. So the secondary challenge. Okay, I want you all you out there in the audience, take a second and just read a few of these facts for me. So, Dr. Allen, Jenny Lee, do y'all find these statistics startling?
I'll let Jenny Lee speak first on that, and I'll add in.
Yeah, I've honestly, after I've almost had 25 years in high school education, and unfortunately, these very much speak to what I've noticed over the years. And it's only unfortunately gotten worse in the last 4 years of our pandemic.
And then just adding to that, kind of coming from the higher ed background, is we see what happens on the other side of that fence when students graduate from high school and come into college, that there's certainly an added challenge of bringing students up to the level where they can take on their more core curriculum. Sometimes those beginning courses have to spend more time than instructors of those beginning gateway courses have to spend more time than they would want to reinforcing and bringing students back up. So absolutely, right? The answer to your question, absolutely a challenge.
Yeah. And what we believe here is, one of the solutions for this really is high quality instructional material. And we know that we're in need of serious change, but first kind of looking at to get to the bottom of it and know why, and the fact is that, districts have to budget. They have budget lines for supplemental curriculum items, and I think that's a big clue that, our current core curricula, when they're supplementing that core curricula with additional what they call core curricula, it's just not cutting it. When almost half the students kick off the school year behind and teachers are expected to do that 150% of the usual workload, it's obviously that something's off. And that's a ton to ask of our teachers. I think Jenny Lee can speak to that. You don't, that's hard to do when you're trying to teach your current grade level and then trying to get students caught up. That's a tough job to ask of someone. And the root of the problem is, it's just curriculum. We shouldn't be scrambling to cobble together quality content. We believe that you should have a robust, high quality curriculum right out of the gate. So, looking here, we can see how the transition from a middle school curriculum, to a high school curriculum and really what it would look like. Teachers, and the materials, they need to support student shift in their thinking from, will this work to why does this work in order to address, those disciplinary core ideas. And with OpenStax, they understand that scientific knowledge, it's constantly evolving. They engage students in multiple ways across so many nuanced aspects of any specific topic. The students, we know they're coming from various backgrounds and experiences, and the OpenStax, they recognize this. So every interaction and topic in a course, brings opportunities to engage them. It truly enriches the experience for everyone. Okay. In our partnership at Kiddom, we're looking to build on OpenStax mission, and their goals. So, in an effort to create equitable access for all students, we've included pieces like our partnership here with Labster, and their amazing simulations that, Jenny Lee just spoke on, to really further enrich the science experience for all students. So, just a little background, OpenStax was initially crafted, as a collegiate level textbook and has now extended its reach to high schools, and they're aiming to better equip all students for advanced science studies and college sciences, and that kind of speaks to your point there, Dr. Allen. We don't want kids getting to that next level and coming in unprepared. So we believe that, OpenStax, they're rich in their comprehensive content, is undoubtedly going to help prepare students for future success. So moving into the path forward, for the sake of time, I'm going to slide through these so you can kind of read them on your own. And I really just want to talk a little bit about Kiddom, as you're reading through these. So as I dive into Kiddom, I want you to know that we strongly believe that, while that high quality core curriculum is crucial for student success, relying solely on a standalone curriculum, it's just not sufficient. And we recognize the importance of localizing the curriculum, empowering teachers and administrators to tailor it, so they can best suit this, suit their schools and their classrooms and their community. We truly believe that, and that's why we've developed our interactive digital teaching and learning environment, that takes curriculum and really breathes life into it. So let me tell you, with Kiddom, every teacher, they're going to gain access to a range of tools from slide decks to PowerPoint presentations, and that includes for every lesson. It allows them to craft a personalized learning environment for their specific classroom. And they have these ready to use resources. They can use them not only to facilitate classroom management, but also it enables district leaders and, and their PLCs to really collaborate and customize and continually, just refine their lesson plans in their scope and sequence. So teachers can take these tasks, they can assign them, and from there, they're able to assess student progress in real time and really collaborate with students as lessons unfold. So what Kiddom does, in the curriculum phase and that customization part is, it really streamlines the curriculum workflow. So what we look to do is, we want to save teachers time in planning, and we want to provide them with that actionable real-time reporting. So that's one of our key pillars. And what our platform is built on are the pillars of equity, ownership, and insight. Okay, we want to allow teachers to easily modify curriculum for students based on mastery levels or assign additional support and enrichment activities as needed. And by integrating engaging student and teacher tools with customizable lessons, what we do there is we're enhancing the learning experience of core curricula and consolidating everything into this, one-stop shop. So you have your curriculum, your lesson planning, your assessments, your grading, your presentation materials, and your classroom communication all in that one system. So kind of going back to what Jenny Lee said, it takes you from having to hop around in different places to try and do what you need for your students when we're putting it all in this one place. And like our partnership with Labster, we're going to have that all tied right there for you to where you can easily access all these great things that you've heard today. So, like I said, at Kiddom, we do understand that professional learning plays a pivotal role in supporting the effective implementation of curriculum. It serves as a dynamic catalyst for educational improvement, and that's one thing that we recognize. So our professional learning sessions, they provide development for your educators as they implement their curriculum, whatever that may be. But Kiddom's PL does this in the context of the new curriculum. So educators, they're not going to have to build bridges between development and application. We're going to put that together for them. All right. So any other questions, feel free as we jump into this. I would love for you guys to reach out and ask me anything Kiddom related, in addition to all these great things about Labster. Definitely here for it. So that being said, let's take a few questions.
Yeah, see, we have a couple of questions that came in through our Q&A board, and some of these topics we've touched on, but Jenny Lee, not surprisingly, most of them are kind of aimed toward you. So, what have you used open educational resources? Talk to us some about that. Have you used OpenStax or any other open educational resource content?
Great question. I will say this. I raised my hand because I want to know when Georgia standards will be aligned with the Kiddom platform, because I'm feeling really left out. I really am excited about what Kiddom's doing. We don't have that. What I have cobbled together, I have a course cartridge in my Desire to Learn learning management system from OpenStax for Biology 2E. I had to go through and align it to the state standards all by myself because I have a background in instructional design. It's not so bad, but I'm very excited to see what Kiddom has. So I'm waiting for you guys to roll into Georgia. I don't know when that's happening. Give me a TBA on that.
Absolutely. We have quite a few curricula in Georgia already, but yeah, we'll definitely keep you on the loop there.
But honestly, the going and getting these resources, and it's time consuming. We call ourselves media specialists sometimes as online educators and educators in general, because what we're doing is we're constantly curating content. and resources. That's what teachers do. I can't say that it's easy, but it's easier because of Labster.
Absolutely.
One additional question. I love this kind of big thinking question. If you could wave a magic wand, right? Because this is a science class and we're going to bring magic into it. You're going to wave your magic wand. What would you change about STEM teaching?
First of all, if we would go away with standardized testing, then we could really do, the Sir Ken Robinson has this wonderful paradigm of education. If anybody hasn't heard of that, I know that April and Julie and I talked about it before, where we're teaching to test still. That's just the same old song and dance. We're not engaging our learners, but STEM education in preparation for careers in the real world, and even to be a citizen, a citizen scientist. In this pandemic, 99% of our problem in scientific literacy has been no one understands because they didn't learn anything in high school science or they don't retain anything. So I don't mean to get on my soapbox there, but STEM in itself is life. STEM is life. I'm a living, breathing miracle of medical modern technology and innovation myself. And honestly, if I could wave my magic wand, we would be doing it differently where we didn't worry about testing. A formative assessment or a formative assessment plan does not need to have a summative assessment state standardized test, but here we are, we still have it. We can only support each other and make our lives easier by using Kiddom and Labster and other educational technology that actually is worthwhile.
I think we have a couple of questions that focus in on one particular topic, so I'm going to kind of combine them. And that is this, like we see all these advancements in technology. And as you said, today is Innovation Day, right? So, it's a time to celebrate all the different advancements. Sometimes those technologies can leave different populations behind. But you've shared in your stories that you have found ways to be inclusive and bring people in, whether it's a learning disability or ADHD or something that might be a challenge for that student to learn in traditional ways. Do you see ways that technology and innovation can aid in teaching or has aided, or what have you experienced? What have you deployed to make teaching and learning more successful for students with different backgrounds?
That's a great question, Julian. I will say that the students who I have struggled the most to meet their needs, because we have to find where we can activate their learning, would be the students who are on the spectrum, who have been classified as autistic, ADD, ADHD, like you said. And I know the question earlier was about, is there too much gamification? Well, I understand those, sometimes they say, oh, those kids are playing games too much and such. But this use of educational technology to meet those specific needs of that learner that is on the spectrum, and they would not learn the content otherwise. That level of accessibility is life changing and has been to several students, and not just the one I keep bringing up because he's on my mind on a daily basis. But those are the scenarios. Those real life examples of success. That would be my touchstone, so to speak.
Well, I don't see any additional questions coming in, and I can't think of a better way to end the conversation than the story you just shared, right? The ability to reach out to different students who bring their true self into teaching and learning, or into the learning process, and you bring your true self into the teaching process, and you're equipped with the tools to make that magic happen, if you will. So with that, I want to say thank you. I know that our friend Quentin here might want to kind of close out the meeting in his own way, but I just want to thank you, Jenny Lee, for taking the time to share your stories with me and for sharing it with the world out there in K-12 education, as we think about what can we do differently to inspire students to take on learning in STEM, and and inspire that digital literacy that we need to be, as you said, good citizen scientists. So thank you for that.
Yes, thank you, Jenny Lee. Just kind of wrap it up. I think this conversation between the two of them shows you guys just how really why we're so excited about this partnership with Labster. It's amazing stuff. We think it's just going to complement the Kiddom teaching and learning environment very well. And I thank you guys for your time and joining us today.
Yeah, looking forward to building on this partnership. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, goodbye.